Hello, listeners, and welcome to this week's Football-Oranje podcast. This week, it's a little bit special. We've got two pods for you. This first one covers everything on the national team. For more stuff on the Eredivisie, wait until tomorrow's podcast. I'm here with James, Chaka, Michael Bell, the editor, and myself, I'm Michael Statham. As usual, we are on YouTube, SoundCloud, and iTunes. So make sure to like the video or the file, share with friends, and comment. Get involved. Let us know what you think about our podcast. Let us know what you think about the national team. Cheers. So we had a question in asking, it's a bit obvious, but what's gone so wrong with the national team, and why did it take so long to sack Blind?
If I can start on that one, being based here in the Netherlands, if I may, a lack of foresight and policy really has led to the reason why it took so long. I think these problems can be traced back to when Hiddink was first announced as a successor to Van Gaal, wherein the public wanted Koeman. Koeman himself wanted the job. Bert van Oostveen decided to appoint Hiddink with Danny Blind as Hiddink's assistant, and then to shortly afterwards proclaim that Blind would then go on to be the successor to Hiddink. Obviously, in football, you can't really plan for anything, to be honest, and to be able to be so resolute as Oostveen was to proclaim that this is the way we're going to do it, come hell or high water. And then the difficult Euro 2016 campaign, which saw Blind take over the reins for arguably the biggest job in Dutch football, and for him to be so inexperienced. But at the same time, you cannot blame him for taking the job, because if your country calls you in that respect, it's very difficult to turn it down. I personally think the group that was drawn in for Euro 2016, where they failed to qualify, smacked of arrogance that they thought that everything was going to be okay in a group with Turkey, Czech Republic, and a fantastic generation of Iceland players who've gone on to achieve what they have. When the draw for this World Cup qualification was made, you could also see potential difficulties with France being the powerhouse they are, difficult games with Sweden and Bulgaria. And I just think they've lost their way. The sad fact is that the KNVB used to be so well run, used to be so transparent, and it appears now to be a selection of directors that have come together to only really look for their own interests rather than the national interest, that the country goes on to equal what's gone before, or possibly even improve on what's gone before.
I agree with James. I think also had to do with Michel van Praag. He was the president of the KNVB. He chose to run for FIFA president, unsuccessfully pulled out in one of the final weeks. And also just a matter of a lot of change under him. And, Hans van Breukelen, one of the directors, was only hired last year. So I think by the time he was hired, I think he decided to give Danny Blind some time, and everyone decided, and they sort of hired Dick Advocaat to help him in the, I think, May to July period last year before he took his job in Turkey. And things started to improve after that. Ruud Gullit was also, they also tried to hire him, but I think he saw what was going on at the KNVB, and he sort of stepped back from his role, which is it's ironic that he put himself up for the job, even with the same structure in place, and Van Breukelen, one of his teammates, and them apparently not getting, one of his teammates at PS3, them apparently not getting along. And I think they just put in Fred Grimm as his assistant because he had worked with the youth national team, and he had sort of a better knowledge of the players coming through and the playing staff. He had managed the young Johansson at Almere City and in the Dutch under-21 national team. And I think it's taken the fact that there's been all this change means that it's taken long to fire him, because they really wanted to give him a good opportunity, and I think it was also going to be incredibly embarrassing for the KNVB to fire him early, because I think this was the succession plan. It was Van Gaal to Hiddink, which failed in a year, to Blind, and this was a succession plan for way longer than it's originally lasted. And having sort of firing Blind right now is incredibly embarrassing for them. And there was even talk of Louis van Gaal being CEO, and they haven't yet enticed him though. But I read in Football International that them sort of planning to entice Van Gaal means that Grim will spend longer in the role, and he could also be interim manager by the time the next round of international matches come in June, July, and that means that they won't get a new manager until the structure above is sorted out, which is, I think, quite chaotic, and because they're in so much danger of not qualifying for the 2018 World Cup.
I think why it took so long to sack Blind as well, it's worth noting that he actually got some good results in some friendlies. Whenever it looked like he was on his last legs, they would pull out a result. Last year they beat England 2-1 at Wembley, they beat Austria. I mean, these results, made it look like something was happening. It was going to start being positive. But to go back on what's gone wrong, I think arrogance is a key factor. They obviously thought your 2016 qualification was guaranteed. That didn't happen. And I think they thought that whoever they hired would have got them there. And I think that's why they overvoted Koeman. I think they thought Hiddink will come in, he'll get him there easily, and then he'll pass on to his knowledge to Blind, and Blind will take on from there. And it's just not worked like that. The national teams of other countries are getting stronger. Iceland are no longer a team that Holland will go and beat 5-0. They're a team that can actually match them now. And I don't think Holland have actually adapted well to modern football. They try to play the same way that they've always done. And instead of matching tactics like Van Gaal did, they try to go back to the 4-3-3, which is just, it's not worked.
Yeah, I agree with the point about whenever Blind was in trouble, a result would always be pulled out. The Sweden match was a good example of that, where they drew 1-1 and they could have won the game. It was interesting tactics that Blind seemed like he wanted to play two wing backs that were very high at the pitch as their main focal point of attack. And it worked for the most part, but Sweden could still catch the Netherlands out on the break. And there's just some key simple errors. Like there was, again, we always say this point about the Netherlands, where they need a defensive midfielder, and Stoutman is not enough by himself. So when they're playing high wing backs, they need either a defensive midfielder to sit back and be in, back quite far back in the defence, as almost like what's the word? A bit like a sweeper, I guess, but you know what I mean. An anchor man, or you need to have a back five, which again Blind would experiment with. It wouldn't work, and there's just some vital key errors that kept coming up time and time again. Because, for example, that Sweden match, they might have won had some tweaks been done tactically.
I think the good run you guys are talking about, I think it was also the time that Advocat was helping Blind, and there was that sort of experience next to him. And it was a better time for the national team, because Richard Lee Bazot was getting regular game time at Ajax, and he looked like he was going to be the defensive midfielder for the next few years. Riedewald and Tete had got their starts. El Ghazi had also played a bit, and those are the players that Blind started to bring in. And I think a lot of sort of the young players that are in the sort of crucial positions for the Dutch national team haven't really started to kick on really in their careers. And I think we saw Memphis recently has just come back and regained his confidence, which will be important for the Dutch national team going forward. And I think this style of play, the thing that really proved that Blind was a limited manager was, I think they played the 4-3-3 and they tried to play this Cruyff style, and you knew what they were trying to do, but the fact that they were so weak at the fundamentals, pressing, ball circulation, approach play, interchange in positions, and just all-around positional play, and the fact that they were very lacking in those fundamental aspects of modern-day total football just showed how limited the coaching was. And I think the playing staff isn't the best that the Dutch national team has had, but there's still very good players there, and there's still players capable of qualifying for World Cup or qualifying for Euros, and the fact that hasn't been done has been very disappointing for Dutch national team fans.
I think if you look back against Bulgaria, you can pick two decisions that cost Danny Blind's job, really. One was picking De Ligt in the starting lineup. I mean, it was a disaster. A 17-year-old shouldn't be put in that position, wasn't ready, and he got found out. I think Bulgaria pinpointed it perfectly, and then within 20 minutes, you're 2 goals down. And then, with 20 minutes to go, Netherlands are pressing forward. He decides to bring on Luc de Jong, which took out all the pace. He brought up Quincy Promes. He went Luc de Jong, Bastos up front. And from that point on, Netherlands just looked terrible. No pace. They're launching balls forward for Wesley Sneijder to chase on the left-hand side. There was this Bulgaria just saw the game out so comfortably, and Jeremy Lons and Memphis Depay were sitting on the bench, and it actually showed them sitting together, and Jeremy Lons turned around to Memphis Depay at one point and was shaking his head, and you could tell there was no pace in that team. Bulgaria just sat back, sat deep, and were just so untroubled by having Bastos, Luc de Jong there. And, he didn't even put crosses in for them. It's 2 massive strikers up front. You weren't even putting crosses in there. Try to get the ball to Robin. Robin was trying to cut in, kept losing it. The ball kept going to David Klaassen, who, his passing was absolutely shocking. He was passing out for throw-ins constantly. Just the whole structure of the team had no confidence in what the game plan was. And I think, bringing on De Jong just confused them. And, that just shows how poor a coach he is.
I think also sort of the game plan they were trying to play was poorly implemented on the training pitch. I think it reminds me of sort of a time in Germany's history where Ruud Völler was the national team manager, and Philipp Lahm in his autobiography sort of likened it to going on international break to going on holiday, because it was just some routine shooting drills with no defense, and that was it. And I think and there wasn't really this tactical training that he would get at club level. And you've seen that with the Dutch national team, and you sort of see the way they press. They sort of leave the holes in midfield because the team doesn't press together. The defense is sitting deep. The deepest midfielder is sitting so far away from the highest attacker that the spaces in midfield and teams can play out. And just the fact that once the Dutch national team lose the ball, nothing happens. And an essential facet of sort of the total football is the 5-second rule. Just the ball near midfielder pressing immediately, he loses the ball. And you've seen the Dutch national team sort of concede many goals since the World Cup from situations where they've just lost the ball in deep midfield. And the fact that against Bulgaria you sort of push Danny Blind forward, who's going to have a hard time recovering, but you don't push Rick Karsdorp forward, who's sort of the more able back and forth fullback, and we didn't see him get to push forward as much as he should. And the first goal is sort of conceded through the Dutch national team losing the ball while Danny Blind has pushed forward, and Matthias de Ligt obviously makes the mistake. And the thing about De Jong and Dos, that isn't the first time we've seen it happen in Blind's tenure. We've also seen it happen in Hidding's tenure, and it's just a constant thing that keeps on happening. They're in a losing position or the drawing, and they bring on the two big strikers, and it's just hit and hope from there. And someone on Twitter was pointing out it's very sad that, I know it's indicative of the state of Dutch football, that Wesley Sneijder is still your most creative midfielder.
I think also the game on Saturday showed how important experience is at international level, not just playing but also managing. Danny Blind had one season as manager of Ajax back in 2005, and having only had 1 year's experience at club level, he couldn't call on much experience to use at international level. You saw that straight from the kickoff, that first attack launched by Bulgaria, which led to a free kick, I believe. They targeted Matthias de Ligt. They knew what they were doing. And I spoke to William Vloet last summer, who has almost 30 years' experience managing in the Netherlands in all different facets, from head of scouting, management, technical director. And he told me in his own words that the Dutch KNVB lately are more concerned with producing paperwork and manuals rather than having the right people in the right places on the training pitch, helping players to get even better. The intensity to look at different ways of playing, even the physical level, and to be open to new ideas. And with the situation that the national team finds itself in, especially here in the Netherlands at the moment, there's a lot of questions going round as to what needs to be done, how can we change things, what were we necessarily doing wrong. And I just think that the whole setup has lost its way a little bit. But when you look back at previous Dutch coaches, you've got Frank Rijkaard, Louis van Gaal, Gus Hiddink. These are very, very big names with an awful lot of experience. And even back with Hiddink back in '98 when they reached the semi-finals, the Dutch have always needed a strong-willed manager to form a hard-working team. If you look at the teams they had in the past in 2014 to 1998, where they reached the semi-final, it's always been a combination of in the case of the generations they had, exceptional talent and an exceptional manager combined with the two facets. And in the case of the last year, they've had a very, very inexperienced manager and a group which needs to basically be taught how to work hard together in a positional sense, in an attacking sense, in a defensive sense. And I think the KNVB need to be really, really strong-willed in their decisions, and all the directors that they have come and gone within an organisation, they need to put their own interest to one side. They need to look at what's best for the national team going forward, and if that means swallowing their pride and making an offer which can't be refused for certain candidates, then so be it. Because you have to look. There's been news lately about the times where they missed the 1982 World Cup. They missed the Euros in '84, and they missed the World Cup in '86. The points of the previous days was, but we won it in '88, and they're kind of in a naive sense thinking, oh, maybe we'll miss one World Cup and one Euros, but maybe come good in Euro 2020. I just hope that they analyse thoroughly and look at what needs to be done. And I would refer the KNVB to look to what's gone before and look how the organisation used to be so transparent, where they used to, as I know it sounds really easy, but the best Dutch club coach at that time would naturally become the national team manager. If you look at when Bert Vermaelen was appointed back in 2008, he was the only candidate. He was the only one they spoke to, because they went for him when he was at when he was at Feyenoord, and he became national team manager, and he got them to a World Cup final. So I would plead for the Dutch FA to look at what's gone before, put their own egos and pride aside, and make decisions which will make the national team improve again slowly but surely.
Yeah, let's not forget that the Bulgaria match was as bad as it looked. That Bulgaria weren't anything special. They didn't carry any real threat apart from literally feeding off the errors of Gullit. Second half, I don't think they had a chance of note, as long as I can remember. It was all mostly an attacking sense as well. There were all the players didn't like they were playing for the manager at all. And this is the next key thing: will the next manager of the Dutch national team will they be able to lift the players out of this kind of match? Let's say they're having that kind of match again, half time. Who's going to talk to them? Who's going to change their attitude? Because nothing really changed in the second half of the Bulgaria match. What did Gullit say in there? What does he have the experience to know that kind of thing? And I think that's where the next managerial appointment should be aimed at. A manager who can get them to have the passion again for playing for the national team. And maybe that's why Arjen Robben and Wesley Sneijder want to be committed in helping choose that next manager. So maybe they know that he can get on with the players, who knows the players, and knows how to help in these kind of situations. He's experienced in these kind of situations.
The most important thing that the next manager should have is a better knowledge of the playing staff, not just in the Eredivisie, but in the other leagues in Europe. And that's something that Danny Bledant hasn't shown throughout his tenure. I think Gullit was picked. I think we spoke about on the podcast last week. I think we said that we could understand if you picked him as a learning experience to just sort of play against these players like Schneider, Janssen, Dust, and just learn from them. But to actually start him in a game when there's Wesley Hott, who's played for Lazio, who are in the top 5, top 4 in the Serie A this season, I think it was surprising. I think even the Telegraph and Football International, they didn't see it coming. Even the teams that they were producing before the match didn't have De Ligt in it, because no one expected him to play the game, because Blind said he was just there for a learning experience. And just how he sort of played Wijnaldum throughout his tenure. He's either pushed Wijnaldum too high, or he's either had him too deep. I think against Bulgaria, you sort of saw Strootman having to drop into a back three with the centre backs, and that would sort of force Wijnaldum to drop deep, and that's not his position. That's not the position he plays for when he's at Liverpool. And there was one instance in the first half where you saw an attack, and Robben was in the defensive line helping build up. I think that's incredible. When you compare how eager that Van Gaal was to get him, to push him forward and keep him forward. And it's just starting Memphis calling up Memphis and playing Memphis when he's at Manchester United and he's not getting the game time. But when he comes back into form, you leave him on the bench. And then there just many other situations like that. And you just need a manager like who's either managed against the current crop of players, or who has managed the current crop of players, who understands where everybody's position is, what system gets the best out of the current playing staff, and things like that, and that's when you can start to seeing these marginal improvements.
Who would be your pick for next manager, Chaka?
I'm going for either Ron Jans or Alex Pastoor. Those, I would have gone for Frank de Boer, but he ruled himself out because he's managed against most of the players. But I think Ron Jans, they touted him for the national team boss a few years ago. Very experienced enough to know what type of football he can play once he walks into the Dutch national team dressing room, and he can also sort of lead these young players through. And they also sort of seen him being given the role in the KNVB to teach the next crop of coaches. So he's very, very highly regarded in the KNVB, and I think he's a very, very capable manager, and that's been shown in the way that he's made PEC a very established Eredivisie club. And Pastoor, because I think he's a very interesting manager. I think this season for Sparta, he's played a very young defense, an 18, a 19, and a 20-year-old in a back four. And there's been games where he's shown that he's tactically very, very quick, and he's tactically very sharp. And he's also very experienced too. He's 51 years old. And he got that win against Feyenoord. And Jordi Cruyff and Maccabi Haifa and Jordi Cruyff and Maccabi was looking at him this season, and he's a very interesting manager. And also you also need someone that can sort of create a blend between some of the older players and some of the sort of younger players, and someone who knows that at Roma, Kevin Strootman doesn't play as a sole defensive midfielder. He's given a role where he's allowed to play the ball and allowed to move the ball past pressure. Someone who will know that Jorginho Wijnaldum's at 8. Someone who know that Quincy Promes can play in the center and he can play out wide. And just someone who would have a better knowledge of the playing staff and who's much more sure of himself tactically, and a manager with more experience. And I think if you're looking at someone within the realm of someone not being a foreigner, I think you look at those two. And even if you look at foreign picks, I think there's nobody out there where you would be willing to say, let's take a chance on this guy, because I think if the KNVB takes a chance on a foreigner and it fails, it's a much bigger embarrassment for them.
Yeah, I agree with your point, Chaka, about the need for the manager to be perhaps on the Eredivisie. But do you not think, for example, as Robin and Schneider want to be involved, do you think that those two, for example, would be as open-minded as perhaps we are for an Eredivisie manager, a young Eredivisie manager? Because for me, my picks would also be Ron Jans and also Erik ten Hag at Utrecht. I think he is very good. He can handle. He's shown that he can handle big characters, which hopefully is something that could shine through if they did ever look at him. For example, last summer he let certain players leave if they wanted to, if they felt they were ready for the next step. But he held back Sebastian Haller, even though there was interest from England as well as elsewhere. And I feel like Ten Hag had as a stronghold over Haller to say, I'd like you to stay here another season. You can help develop the club yourself. And he persuaded him. And I think he's the kind of character they need. And if you see him in interviews, the way he conducts himself, he's a very assertive character. And I think, again, that's something the national team needs. But again, do you think they're going to be open to that kind of thing, the KNVB?
Well, I think on Ten Hag, though, you have to realise that he did manage Bayern Munich's second team, which means that Robin might actually have some experience with him.
Yeah, I think Ten Hag's done very well, especially switching to the diamond this season. after Ramsela left, and moving Ayub into a different position. And I think he would be good, and he's sort of the first of these sort of new breed of managers coming through. Him, Van Bronckhorst and Koku. But I think I think the KNVB wouldn't be looking at him, and I think in a sense he's better in the Eredivisie, sort of with Utrecht, and then sort of moving onto PSV where he already coached, and then I think sort of progressing to the Dutch national team after that. And in Football International, another footnote that I read on the Louis van Gaal situation was that he would probably have someone that Van Gaal knows personally, someone in the sort of Kluivert, Stevenberg realm, and that's quite interesting because those it's a weird realm to be in, because Kluivert's not that experienced as a coach, and he could have gained more experience with the Ajax under-19s this season. And Stevenberg's not experienced as a first-team coach, but also Andries Jonker's not experienced as a first-team coach, but he's walked into Wolfsburg and he's done well over the past few games, and he's sort of started using Richard Di Bazoa again and started developing him. But I think I forgot another one. It would be John Van den Brom. Even though he's sort of had a stinker this season, he's also a manager I rate very highly. I think very tactically able, and I think also very experienced. And I think they should go for an Eredivisie manager, whether it be Ten Hag or Jans, Pastoor or Van den Brom, because those are the managers that sort of know this playing stuff. You say that there's a golden generation coming through. That's what the KNVB is saying, and they say a golden generation is coming through Dutch football. So you need sort of a manager that will sort of know the players that are coming through. So someone that's watched the youth game, someone that's had to prep against some of the other teams in the Eredivisie. So when these young players do come through, someone that's using them well, someone that's nurturing them well, someone that's not playing a 17-year-old in a crucial World Cup qualifier after he's only played 6 games, 2 starts in the Eredivisie. And I think an Eredivisie manager, experienced, battle-hardened in that league, will certainly should be the first option for them, unless they can find someone, unless you can entice Koeman or entice Rijkaard out of retirement or do something special. I think you should you put put the national team in the safe hands of an Eredivisie manager.
My picks would be Ronald Koeman or Gullit. Reasons why: I see a lot of similarities between this squad and the one that Ronald Koeman had when he first went to Ajax in 2003. It was a very, very young squad that needed to be guided, that needed to be moulded. And this is a manager that managed to get that very young, eager team to nearly the semi-finals of the Champions League. He's gone on to build lots and lots of experience in Germany and in Spain, and in England. And I know that Koeman has said that I don't want it. The KNVB have had their chance, but the KNVB need to swallow their pride. And even if they have to apologise to Koeman to entice him, then so be it. Because I understand what you're saying about Erik ten Hag and Ron Jans, but also with Gullit, he may have had a checkered managerial career, but he will be able to install charisma into the squad, where the squad will want to go to meet up at international setups and to play for to come into contention to play under such a legend. I think the charisma that Gullit would bring would help the squad in the short term. Gullit wants to have the job, and I just think that for me the outstanding candidate is Koeman. I know that the KNVB will probably take his word that, I don't want it. They'll take it as a given and not give it to him. But I just think he's the outstanding candidate. And as I was saying when we first started this pod this evening, they need to go back at what's gone before. With Van Marwijk was the outstanding candidate. They gave him the job. Van Gaal was the outstanding candidate. They gave him the job. It's not rocket science. And I think if they was to employ Koeman or Gullit, then in the short to mid to possibly even long term, you'll see a vast improvement in how the squad is organised, how the squad is selected, and also the charisma of the national team, because that also needs to be looked at. Because you saw what appeared to be 11 individuals against Bulgaria on Saturday, not really wanting to take the responsibility, wanting to realise the situation they find themselves in. And if they had a Koeman in the dugout or a Gullit in the dugout, that message would be made clear to them before they even set foot on the pitch, and therefore you'd get a different reaction. So Gullit or Koeman would be my picks.
I think I understand what you're saying with Koeman, but I think leaving an Everton job where he's got good young players coming through, a wealthy owner at the top, and a club that genuinely believe in him, and he might finish in the top 7 this season. And there's interest in him from Barcelona. So I think at club level, he's probably enjoying it too much to take up a Dutch national team role. And I think they sort of missed the bus on Koeman when they wanted him to be assistant coach to Hiddink. And with Gullit, you don't quite know, because he didn't see eye to eye with Van Breukelen when they tried to make him assistant manager, and he did sort of this whole thing. He did an interview with the Guardian where he just explained what was going on at the KNVB. So a lot of bridges would have to be patched up for Gullit to get the role. So they're definitely two good picks, but with the current state that the KNVB is in, and the way they've burnt bridges with those two guys in particular, it's hard to see them stepping into that role.
Certainly from this end, Chaka, I don't believe that the bridges that would need to be built between Van Breukelen and Gullit are it's not possible. I believe that there's common ground to be found there, especially between those two. I don't think it's played out as negatively as what the media would say it has between Van Breukelen and Gullit personally. I think in the case of Koeman, he's a proud man, obviously. He feels hurt by being overlooked, by really, really wanting to have the job. And I think if he really wants to become manager of Barcelona, I personally don't believe that Barcelona are looking at Everton. I think if he was to go to the national team and bring the national team back up to the level that's gone before, I think that could very well be the final piece in the jigsaw that puts him in the contention to be Barcelona manager. So I think that I just hope that that the KNVB assess the situation properly, because this is a time now where the right decision needs to be made, and if that comes at the cost of the pride of a certain director or the long-term career of someone within that organisation, then so be it. Because to be missing out on 2 major competitions consecutively, yes, it happened before when they had generations that were quite reasonable in terms of talent. So it has happened before, but in the modern age, it will be the first time in a long time, and they need to put things in place to ensure that they can get back to how they were, where they would they're in contention to win qualifying groups, let alone be in the mix to qualify itself. Because when they go down in coefficients and when they have difficult games at international level, it will affect the coefficient, where future qualifying groups, they'll be put in more difficult groups, and they'll need to get a handle on that to be able to put in a position to qualify for future tournaments.
I think one of the main reasons why Koeman's not going to happen is the money. He's got a contract for Everton, and the KNVB would have to delve deep into their pockets to try and even entice Everton to let him go. I think the KNVB right now are trying to get a package together to entice Louis van Gaal to come back, in some sort of capacity, maybe as a director, CEO, is getting mentioned. I think that's where they're really looking at. I think they really want Van Gaal involved. I don't actually think that they're actually looking at the national team manager position right now. I think they're totally concentrating their attention on getting Van Gaal back, getting the structure right, then looking at who's going to come in. As KNVB said today, they might even go with Fred Grimm against Luxembourg, because they just think, that's the game we're going to win, and really think about the position. I agree with Ron Jans. I think Ron Jans would be the perfect man to come in and bring some passion back to the national team. But I think they'll go with somebody young. And I quite like the idea of having a duo in charge. If you're going to put Bertullet there, they need somebody with them. And I think they need to the recently retired players to bring respect. Clarence Seedorf, Edgar Davids has just got his diploma. Mark van Bommel was assistant to Bert van Marwijk at Saudi Arabia. And they're top of their World Cup qualifying group, which is really strong. It's got Australia in there. I think a partnership might be the way going forward. Because I think somebody like Mark van Bommel, Clarence Seedorf, when they walk into a dressing room, the KNVB, that would demand respect. And Bertullet as well would demand respect. And I think them two working together, maybe as a partnership, would work going forward with Van Gaal above them.
If you look back into previous World Cups, Koeman was assistant in the coaching staff when Hiddink was the national team manager. Frank de Boer was involved when Marwijk was manager. So you have a very valid point if they was to have assistants and technical staff who are ex-players who maybe even recently retired that want to get involved. That's similar to what's gone before. As far as I'm aware, this end they are intent on. Jean-Paul de Cassel said that they are looking to appoint a new manager before June, for the match against Luxembourg. I would personally be very surprised if Fred Grimm is manager going into the game at Luxembourg. I think they would have made their decision by that time.
Is it likely that Fred Grimm will be the permanent national team manager, though, if he can attempt to prove himself?
No. I think the risk for that would be far too high, Michael. You've got to remember, this is a manager that 2 years ago was managing Almere City and managed to get them to the promotion playoffs where they lost. If they was to even entertain the notion of Fred Grimm, then they would be going down near enough the same route they've already gone down with Blind. Okay, the protocol's a little bit different, but that would be a big mistake. I think it's quite natural that Blind was relieved of his duties on Saturday. I think it was Sunday. I think it was, and Grimm is assistant and was helping him. So hence he would take charge of the team for the following game a couple of days later against Italy. But I can't see them entertaining that notion whatsoever.
Yeah, I do agree with what you're saying. Seeing as it's still the same backroom team, and it's just one person that's left, so there's not much that's changed around that. I totally see what you're saying. We had a question from Iqbal here. It says, how much of the current situation with Alanya is down to player quality, and how much is down to coaching? Is Daniel Blind all at fault? Is it the players' fault?
Personally, I think it's a combination of both. If that's my personal opinion, it's a combination of maybe not having the truly world-class players of yesteryear or recent years, and having a sufficient manager that can get the quality out of that team. I do believe someone like Koeman, he would be able to mould a team, maybe, for example, selecting David Rupert or Ramsala, or picking players where you can mould a team to go forward together. But I think with the problems they've faced, I think it's been negligence from the KNVB's part to carry on with to bring forward the policy they've adopted, and also the current generation that the national team have.
I think the sort of the player quality, that narrative has been overplayed in the national media, because this team, even though it's not the best team that the Oranje have had in their history, it's arguably a better side than Turkey, Iceland, Czech Republic, and Bulgaria. But I think a lot of what's gone on in the last year has come down to the coaching, to wanting to drill the players in a certain style, and not having the right manager, a manager capable of drilling the players in that style and sort of implementing it. And I think having a manager so inexperienced, so devoid of any real tactical invention, sort of a manager who sort of unaware of how things are going, when things are going wrong, and that sort of things hasn't helped the playing staff. I mean, you still have, I think, a good group of players. You've got Quincy Promes, the star of the Russian league since Hulk left. You've got Robin. You've got Strootman, who's done well for a top 3 side in Italy. You've got a good number of fullbacks. You've got Sillerson and Zoe, the good enough keepers. You were Van Dijk. You had Van Dijk a few months ago before he got injured, who was the star defender in the Premier League. You got Bruma. These are all very good players. These are players that can come together in a sort of squad. These are malleable players that can be molded into a sort of squad. I think Klaassen, you've got Wijnaldum, you've got sort of, there's good players there. I think the playing staff is very capable. It's just that they needed direction, and that's what the Van Gaal's tenure showed. That's what the 2014 World Cup showed. And the 2 managers they've had since then haven't given the direction they needed, and they need more sort of direction than they had in the past. I think you sort of read Dennis Bergkamp's book, and he's talking about basically in the Euros, I think at the late 90s, where they sort of crumbled, and I think Hiddink was in charge, and what happened was there was sort of a battle between, I think, the white Ajax players and the black Ajax players, and there was sort of and you sort of learned how strong the influence from the players was on the coaching staff. You can't do that anymore in modern day football, because I think it always comes down from the coach. Italy went into the Euros with what the Italian media was calling one of the most squads most devoid of talent. But they had a good coach, and look how that ended up. Portugal, they had a young group, and they had older players, and they ended up winning the Euros over a much more talented France team. And so I think in international football and in modern day football, a lot comes down on the shoulders of the coach, especially when you have a squad as capable as this.
I totally agree with that. I think it is down purely down to coaching. I think the players that Netherlands currently have are very talented, and all it's going to take is a coach to mould them and build a team around them. And I think that's what Blind didn't do. He didn't mould a team. He picked the players that were names and put them on the pitch. There was no tactics to it. The defensive midfield area was missing. He just put, I said it a few weeks ago in the pod, that the midfield picks itself for Blind, because he's going to pick Klaas and he's going to pick Stroop and he's going to pick Wijnaldum. It doesn't matter what position he's going to play them. It's just those are the three names that Holland have, so they're going to play. Bastos is going to play because it's the only striker they have. Even Fred Grimm came in and went, or maybe play a wing up front, false nine, see how that works. But Danny Blind just didn't think about that. He thinks, or losing 2-0 to go, throw the big man on. It's ancient football tactics, and I think it is down to the coach. I've seen a lot of people write that it's a shame on Danny Blind, he's thrown in this position, and the players have to take responsibility as well. But the players can do on the pitch what he can do, but it's the coach that molds the team, and I don't think he motivated them at all to play well, and I don't think he had the tactical nous to change it when it wasn't going well. You look at Louis van Gaal, what he did at the World Cup. If Louis van Gaal was in charge of this team now, would they have lost to Bulgaria? I would say definitely not. Would they have lost to Iceland at home? Definitely not. Would they have drawn with Turkey at home? Definitely not. And that's it comes down onto Blind's shoulders.
Yeah, I agree.
Go on, Jay. I hope the next manager brings enthusiasm to the job, which transfers to the players. To elaborate on what Chaka said about the what Bergkamp said with the fraught arguments in the Euro 96 squad. To elaborate on that, there was a time in the recent past where the national team would meet up and they would go for lunch, and you would have players from Feyenoord sitting on one table, players from Ajax sitting on another table, players from PSV sitting on another, and they would never mix. And I think it was Van Gaal who recently had a deliberate ploy to get everybody mixing, get everybody having lunch together, speaking to one another off the pitch, creating friendships and relationships where you can work together on the pitch. If you look at the organisation which Van Gaal took into the World Cup when they finished third, it was a combination of the players playing for him being aware of his qualities, and also taking the position of national team manager extremely seriously. That's why, even though there are rumours and certain groups, especially in the Netherlands, now pleading for a foreign manager. For example, the technical director of FC Twente, Jan van Hulst, stated that he would like to see a foreign manager, and he gave Michel Prudhomme, I believe his current manager of Brugge, that was his choice. But I think you've got to remember it's 1977 since the Netherlands last had a foreign manager in Ernst Happel. Times have changed, people have changed, but I think if they did entertain the notion of a foreign manager, you'd be doing the Dutch managers a disservice, because when you do that, what kind of message are you sending to the young manager taking his course for the first time, having aspirations to be a fully fledged Dutch professional football manager? I think to entertain the notion of a foreign manager would be sending out the wrong message. But considering in the last couple of days, De Boer has said he doesn't want it, Koeman doesn't want it, they could very well find themselves in a position where they're not pushed towards appointing a foreign manager, but it could well end up being something which gathers momentum, where they do maybe start to put the feelers out for someone for a foreign manager, because they don't feel that a Dutch candidate is good enough, perhaps.
Yeah, back to the original question, which said how much is down to players, how much is down to the coaching. I think if you take a look at the performance against Italy, you saw that the players were playing with a bit more freedom, a bit more confidence, and also that, as Michael stated, the fact that there was a false nine, there was a bit more interest in the tactics. Again, I think Michael puts it down to more the coaching side of it. I do agree, but as well, look at the players. What changed? is Fred Klim that has he changed that much to lift the players to this performance, or is it the players are relieved that Blint has left and now they can finally play the way maybe they want to? Because there was a lot of fluidity between Lens, Memphis, Gomez, and you just never saw that before with Blint. Memphis was having a bit of a skill show. Yeah, Promes making his runs. Lens as well, some dangerous crosses. I was a bit disappointed maybe Wijnaldum didn't get a little bit more involved in it as well and have the quartet. But it was much better. It wasn't great. There's still some problems, especially in defence, but it was a lot better.
I think the main thing there was the Dutch did better by not looking inferior to Italy and not being thrashed by Italy. I think there was more organization in the way that they pressed men, and when they closed down Italy, there was literally no way out, and they had to sort of clear the ball, and the Dutch would gain back position and things like that. And even simple things like when Strootman, the reason you didn't see Wijnaldum that much was in the second half was when sort of Strootman went off and Vellena came on. Wijnaldum had to sort of decide to drop deep and help Vellena, who's played as a defensive midfielder, but only when El Ahmadi had gone to the African Cup of Nations. So he helped sort of the young player who was filling in a role that he's not quite sure of yet. And I think also he understood that the midfield wasn't packed with much creativity, so you had to sort of get a more mobile and fluid front line, and you did that by sort of moving Memphis and inside and hoping Promes and him would switch. And I think you looked at even the subtle changes that he made. Tete starting, Holt starting, Memphis starting, Lens starting. These I think in when you talk about Lens, Memphis, and Hood, these are your confident players. These are Memphis is confident in the French league right now. Lens is confident in at the top of the Turkish league right now, and Hood is confident in the Italian league. So these are your players that you should sort of put faith in it because they're playing at the highest level. And also, I think when you talk about Tete and Vellena, Tete had sort of come along in the periphery at Ajax, and he's been second choice to Veltman, but he slowly sort of improved his game, and that's what you've seen recently when he's played when Veltman's been out, and he came on and he had a very good game. And also Vellena, he's not created as much output as you would like him to have, but he's also had a very solid season. He's been much improved from what he's done in the past. He's been much more consistent with what he's done in the past, and he got a run out. And I think the next manager, I think you need to sort of know when to sort of move in players. I think Gullit was brought in after 2 games. How long did we wait for Jorrit Hendricks to get a national team call up? When Jorrit Hendricks was playing regularly for PSV, but in his stead they called Marko Vahinovic, they called Vernon Anita, they called a few others, and you got to know when to sort of bring these players in. And I think, especially when you talk about players like Jorrit Hendricks and Richard Bazua, those are your players that can play defensive midfield, that can play that specialist position where you need them, and they can support Strootman. And so next season, if they start getting game time, you have to know how to bring them in, when to bring them in, and that's what they should sort of look for a manager going forward.
I was at the game last night, and it was very flat in terms of occasion. What was interesting to me was during the warm-up, I paid attention to Fred Klim, and also to his counterpart Giampiero Ventura. And in the case of Ventura, he was so involved in the warm-up, you wouldn't believe. He's deliberate. Normally, you leave that to your technical staff, but he's deliberately keeping an eye on his players. The level of pace involved in the warm-up from the Italians was extremely impressive. And when I looked at him in the opposite dugout, it was as if somebody who shouldn't really be there found himself there in kind of an overwhelming sense of, where am I? You know, if I just wandered into like if I wandered in through via a separate entrance into a stadium, into a technical area. The crowd as well. The game wasn't sold out. It was the right mixture of even people that were in Amsterdam on holiday for a couple of days, wanting to take in a match. They went 1-0 up through an own goal from Romagnoli, and they couldn't even hold the lead for a minute. The very next attack that Italy played was a fantastic strike player there. And then they scored shortly afterwards with Bonucci as well. When De Rossi came off, it kind of gave the national team, the Dutch national team, a bit of a lift. That, if not the best player of playing for Italy, has gone off. They played with a bit more vigour in the second half with chances that they had, and when Sneijder came in. But I think it would help the next manager to really take the job seriously. I'm not saying that the others haven't, but there is a need now to really want to deliver success for the national team, so that the whole setup gets an injection where everybody is infused by meeting up at a national team qualifier or friendly, where players, staff, manager, they all want to go, they all want to see one another, to speak about different things. And I think that would help the national team going forward.
I think.
Right,
Michael, you were. Yep.
Arjen Robben's comments, which are up on the site after the game yesterday. He started with, "There's something on the lines of, thank God this week's over." You know, that's not what you want to hear from your national team captain. You know, he's happy to be back at Bayern because it wasn't a good week at the national team. And I'm glad that he stayed with the squad, because if he had actually gone home after it got sacked, I think it would have been a bit of a disgrace for the captain to jump ship when there's a problem. But you could tell that he didn't really want to be there, and I think that's quite damning on a captain. And I think the new coach that comes in needs to look at for leaders in the squad that are going to G the play up. Robben against Bulgaria, he wasn't G'ing up the players. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't doing anything to change the way the game was going. And you saw an injection of confidence against Italy. What it does, bring Valhena in instead of Strootman. The game changes in the second half. He was more positive. He was looking forward. He was passing the ball forward. He was trying things. Memphis, instead of Robben, he has more skill. He has more skill than Dost. He was turning players. He's running at players. You didn't see that against Bulgaria. You saw passing back and forth with no actual end product. Against when you bring these confident players in, you see what impact it has. Lawrence is doing so well in Turkey this season. He gets his chance, and he's running at Italian defenders who actually looked scared whenever he got on the ball. And this new coach that comes in needs to look at that. He needs to look at the players that are going to bring something to the national team. Get rid of these players that don't want to be there. If Robben doesn't want to be there, there's players that can replace him. Robben is the most talented Dutch player. I'm not saying that, but you need a team, not an individual that turns up and decides if something's not going well, he wants to go back to Bayern because that's where he has success.
I think in the case of Arjen Robben, Mike, there was an agreement in place where he would only partake in the game against Bulgaria and then he would return to Munich. I think that's something that the KNVB and all parties agreed with Bayern Munich beforehand. Having watched the footage of his interview, which I translated for the site, he's not one to shirk his responsibilities, but I completely agree with what you said. It was literally, thank God this week is over. And he also stated that if this was club level, there'd be a game on Saturday where you could rectify something. And in the case of the national team, their next game is in June, so a couple of months away before they can rectify anything with the next step in what will happen with the national team.
I think I defended the playing staff earlier, but I think something that you've seen in Italy and France, you saw Rugani, Romagnoli, Donnarumma made a big save at the end, a few big saves at the end. You saw Bellotti, and for France, you saw sort of Mbappe, Umtiti, and these other nations are creating a higher level of young player, and because they have sort of more competitive leagues, there's more coaches who are willing to do different things, and there's more innovation then. I think with your sort of Matthijs de Ligt, with your Frankie de Jongs, Donny van der Beeks, Abdel Aknouri, Steven Bergwijn, you sort of need to nurture them in a way that they can be like the Italian and French counterparts. And against Atletico Madrid for PSV at the beginning of the season, I think there was a moment where Ramselaar and Bergwijn came on, and they were fresh legs, and I think Ramselaar hit the crossbar, and with a shot after dribbling past one or two players, and Bergwijn he puts in PSV's sort of best cross of that half into the game, and PSV nearly score, and you start thinking these two are really special and they need to be nurtured in that way. And this sort of golden generation of sort of Dutch players, so-called golden generation of Dutch players, needs to be brought through in that sort of fashion. That in the future, in the next 2-3 years, Dutch teams are able to compete in Europe, and the Dutch national team can compete at a higher level. And you've sort of seen Jairo Riedewald and Jorrit Hendricks, who are two incredibly talented players, and you've also seen Kenny Tete. They've all sort of been on the bench this season, and you sort of hope Guardado leaves at the end of this season for PSV, because they rely on him too much, and it gives Hendricks a chance to really start to put some games behind him for PSV and actually look at breaking into the Dutch national team squad. And you hope that Tete and Riedewald stay at Ajax and get more game time next season, so they can also start putting some games behind them and get into the Dutch national team. So I think the priority for most managers should be nurturing a very talented group of young players and hoping that their careers don't go awry like the players before them.
I definitely agree with that. If you look at under 17, under 19 international teams for Netherlands, there's definitely talent coming through. Netherlands under 19s and under 17s are always present at European Championships. They both just recently qualified for ones this summer. But there seems to be something that happens when they get to the age of 20, 21, where it's just not making that step up at the moment. And I think clubs do need to help nurture these talents, because as Chaka is saying, they seem to be turning away from them to go for these more experienced foreign players. Ajax are doing it with, look at Justin Kluivert's coming through, but he's not first choice on the wing. You got Younes on the left and Traore on the right, who'd gone on loan. There's 3 or 4 players at Ajax you look at in the youth team that could come into the first team and play in those positions. Che Nanway is another one for the youth team. Feyenoord have been doing it well with bringing through their Dutch players, but they also went experienced in the summer. They went for Elia and Berghus, Jorgensen up front. PSV have been doing it with De Jong up front, Guardado. That's stopping the likes of Sam Lammers coming into the team. Bergwijn's not getting a chance anymore. Hendricks isn't getting a chance anymore. think there is a certain responsibility to some of these club coaches to bud these players in the first team or try and convince them to go on loan to some of the other clubs in the Eredivisie. Utrecht would probably love to have some of Ajax's players on loan, Vitesse or Herenveen could probably take some and put them in the first team and let them flourish in the league, not just let them sit on the bench or play in the second division week in, week out.
I'm just looking at the Netherlands' upcoming fixtures now. Games against Morocco and Ivory Coast coming up will offer something very interesting before the next qualifiers. Next qualifier against Luxembourg in June. So I think the tough test will come against Morocco and Ivory Coast. And might maybe let us know a bit more of the level the players will be at, and hopefully the new manager will be in place then as well.
I would be surprised if a new manager wasn't in place for the upcoming games against Morocco and Ivory Coast. I think in the case of Morocco, it'd be interesting to see how the squad, when selected, cope with playing in a different climate, because the game will be played in Casablanca. Ivory Coast have had success in recent years with the African Cup of Nations, so it will be a test. And then Luxembourg, and then looking towards the start of next season, I think after 2 or 3 games, they have the away game in Paris against France. So interesting times ahead, but the KNVB must meet the issue head on and resolve the manager issue. When I translated the quotes of Jean-Paul Decazal, he stated that they had contingency plans in place. They were looking at options, and all options are open. So I hope that he keeps his word and they meet the task head on.
I think the crisis has been a bit overstated as well. All is definitely not lost for Netherlands in this World Cup group. They're only 3 points behind Sweden. And you think the home games that got come up, you've got Luxembourg at home, Sweden at home, Bulgaria at home. You're looking away against Belarus and away against France. You win all those games. Maybe sneak a draw in France if a new coach comes in and changes something. That would probably be enough for second and probably enough for a playoff place. And it's not all doom and gloom at the moment. We're definitely not out of the World Cup race. That's definitely not. A lot of the media is going with Dutch football is over. It's a crisis and you're not going to reach the World Cup. But 4 wins out of 5 games and they're second, I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of these sort of foreign media sites, sort of the English media that don't necessarily watch what's going on in the Eredivisie every week, see the type of players that are coming through, just go with this sort of narrative that a lot of the things in Dutch football are going wrong. I read a piece in September after Ajax beat Rostov that Ajax lost to Rostov that everything at Ajax is doom and gloom, and I was like, hey, there's a good talented set of players there, and someone just needs to come in and make it work. And look at where they are now, especially they're in a Europa League quarterfinal against Schalke, and they've only lost 1 game in Europe this season, and I think they just need the right minds and the right positions to really progress. And I think it starts with the next few weeks, seeing how they sort of go about the process of finding of sort of bringing Louis van Gaal and sort of getting a new manager, what type of manager they're looking for, and also at club level, it also starts at how players start playing, how players start reacting. Richard Lee Bazot's not played the first half of the season, but Andries Jonker's come in and at Wolfsburg and has played him since the first game and has basically told him, "You're my starter." And Guardado might be injured for the games this weekend, so you might see Hendricks. and you might see Hendricks play. And I think there's talk about Tete and Yaro Reader for leaving, and you just hope that they don't leave, because if they leave to another league, it's too soon, and it's so soon in their development, and that means you've lost maybe one or two good players there. So you just hope that some things start to go right, and a little bit of luck in some places.
We touched on the previous pod about the venue of the national team, with choices being made to play Luxembourg in Rotterdam and Ivory Coast. I think they really need to take the opportunity to look at reverting back to the old system of rotating between Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and Eindhoven, because they've had the previous games in Amsterdam against Italy, Belgium, France, Czech Republic, for commercial reasons, and as a spectacle, it's been quite flat. I think if they were to have 2 or 3 qualifying games in Rotterdam, I think the atmosphere there would be better. I think it would be more of a spectacle, especially in a qualifying sense. And I think that would translate to the team, and especially make a more daunting atmosphere for the opponent. I think such a decision would help the national team enormously.
I think you need the crowd to be behind the team. In Amsterdam, it's not, the atmosphere is just not there. In Rotterdam, where it's closer and it's more, fun.
More intimate as well, and I think that would help. I mean, for commercial reasons, as in the case of last night, in yesteryear, you would have the whole city would be jumping in anticipation for that game, even in a friendly sense. And there was articles in the newspaper about people that have relinquished their tickets and have decided not to go. And I went for footballing reasons. I went obviously to give a heads up on the podcast as well, in a professional sense. And you could really tell when you looked around at all facets. I thought to myself, if this match was played in Rotterdam or even in Eindhoven, the caveats would be completely different, and maybe even the result would have been completely different.
Yeah, the best game of the Blind tenure was played in Rotterdam against Belarus, where Janssen scores that amazing goal, and Promes scores 2 goals, and Schneider's out wide, and there was a real atmosphere there, and it did translate to the players, and they did reimpose themselves on Belarus. And in Amsterdam, I think things when they tend to have, the Dutch national team tend to have poor sloppy starts, and when they have those poor sloppy starts, then the crowd goes flat, and the Dutch national team can't really come back from that. And I think it to really alternate venues would be a clever idea. I definitely agree with James on that point.
I want to pick up what Michael said about not all being lost in the qualification campaign. If the Netherlands beat Sweden at home, and hopefully a revival does occur, they win some more games. Let's say they get second. There's other teams that are currently in second that they would meet in the playoffs. You've got the likes of Portugal and Italy, but as well you have teams such as Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, Montenegro, Slovakia, and then as Greece and Iceland are also decent teams. There's a bit of a mixed bag there, and I think we'll see when we get there if they do qualify in second. But none of the games are impossible to win, but there are also a lot of winnable games there, a lot of winnable ties.
I think the pressure would be on in such an instance, and I think with playoffs you have also a seeding nature, and with the Netherlands having dropped to 32nd in the world, they may well not receive that seeding. Also, it could be as vague as is the second leg in Dublin, in Reykjavik, in Athens, for example. That could also play a part. And I just think that they need to look short term in making sure they get the right man injecting enthusiasm into the squad, giving the national team a lift, and then continuing through the qualifying campaign. I noticed just now that the venue for the Netherlands Sweden has not been completely confirmed. I would switch that to Rotterdam right now, because that game could be vital. And if that game is played in Amsterdam, then with how the atmosphere kind of leaves the stadium. I mean, you saw it was an own goal, even when the goal was scored last night, there was no rapturous celebration to that. I think they do well to put down a marker, and if that venue has not been completely confirmed, I would switch that game from. I know Amsterdam has been muted for the Sweden game. I would switch that to Rotterdam in the eventuality that there's something riding on that game. A result is needed, and an atmosphere and a daunting situation for Sweden could well put the Netherlands in a position where they could get the desired result.
I think much depends on France as well. Netherlands are really relying on France to not wrap up this group so quickly that they start taking their eye off the game. France beating Bulgaria and Sweden is crucial to Netherlands, and that's the games you're looking at. They're going to drop. You're hoping at least Bulgaria drop at least 6, and Sweden drop at least 6, and Netherlands beat them. Then second place is there. You got a playoff. It's a lottery. You can always get one of the best teams you can get, or you can get Greece. And then Netherlands could be in a World Cup, and then everyone's looking back at Danny Blind's tenure and going, "Oh, that was the right choice to sack him." And now you move forward, and then you look at all these young talents coming through. So next year in the World Cup, I think that this current Netherlands team, you're not looking at competing in a World Cup, but getting there is definitely crucial.